Okay, so continuing on from what we were looking at this morning, a central question is, can we start to see more directly what the internal furniture is that gets in the way of our being open to new situations? In particular, to a situation where we might have a meeting of minds with people who are perhaps a little more open than we are. So one way of approaching this is we'll do some meditation practice, and in this practice the only object of attention is whatever is occurring. So we're not trying to hold anything in particular in mind, any particular object or focus. We're just attending to whatever is there. But there's a secondary task on top of this, which is to observe what happens to yourself when you encounter different kinds of phenomena. So we'll do a simple practice that some of you know, which is just reciting this sound of ah 3 times, relaxing into the sound, letting go of our preoccupations, and through that just being open. We've let go of everything, we don't know where we are, just open, let's see what happens. And then as phenomena arise, thoughts, feelings, sensations and so on, see how you respond to these things. Just very gently, don't try to change anything, but just observe how you might be able to open to some phenomena and how other phenomena you feel a strong suction into, you fuse into them, and others you just find yourself almost like an automatic response, wanting them away. You sort of bat them out of your mind. Ooh. And just try to observe the process of that. Don't stop it, because everything that occurs is providing you with helpful information about how the mind actually functions. So just observe these particular movements. Okay? So we'll try that. And it's rather warm, so you may find yourself being a bit sleepy. If that's the case, relax into the out breath. Just allow a long, slow out breath to be there. That in itself is quite refreshing, because it will then result in a big intake of breath, and stay in that openness. Okay. So we sit well supported by our spine, letting the weight of our body rest on the spine, on the skeleton, chin slightly raised. The gaze is open into the space in front of us. We're not staring into the distance, we're not looking at the far wall, but it's just resting into the spaciousness. And we allow this sound of ah to arise slowly and deeply out of ourselves, and just emptying everything out. Ah. Okay. So we'll do more of that practice, but if the weather's hot and you may be a bit sleepy, it's much better to do it for a shorter period of time and keep your freshness in the practice. So as we started to look, the basis for the continuity of these teachings through time has been the fact that in each generation some people have been able to get it, that they've been able to taste something, see something. What is it that they get? Nothing. When we get something, we don't get nothing. And most of the time we're looking for something. So, how to get nothing? This has to be, this can be approached in many different ways. In the Buddhist teachings, there are many aspects of this. The most outer general method is the path of renunciation, where you start by saying that many of the things in the world that people want to have, I recognize as having no value, therefore I renounce them, which could be ordinary employment, the safety of secure family existence, the comfort of intoxicating substances and so on. You say, no, I won't have any of these. I will take a real refuge in the Dharma and become a monk or a nun. That still leaves you with the fact of having your mental processes and having to try to have less of them. Opening to the emptiness of mental processes is quite difficult because they announce themselves as being of value. Each one that arises, each thought that we have, each feeling that we have says, I'm real, taste me, eat me, believe in me. And we do. It's just like Alice in Wonderland. She sees the bottle, drink me, okay. So whenever a thought comes in our mind, we're suckers for it. We're taken in because it seems to be what the label says. When we experience it, we realize it's not what the label says, but we believe in labels. This is the whole nature of samsara. It's about representations. It's about names. It's about categories. And we prefer the name to the substance. This is the basis of advertising. Making fool's gold appear to be real gold. Making cheap plastic toys from China appear to be Barbie. Now, Barbie has ultimate value. My Little Pony has ultimate value for a child. But really, it's cheap plastic tat. So, the representation, the symbolism, the symbolic fantasy dominates the child. And if the child can incorporate themselves into that fantasy, then the parents will be persuaded to spend £20, £50, £100 on cheap, meaningless bits of plastic. Because they will be the outer symbols that will hold, the outer forms that will hold the symbolic formation that's in the child's mind. And we operate in exactly the same way. We develop symbolic fields of reference, ideas in our heads, and we want them to be in the world. And so we keep looking in the world for something that we can project the longing, the fantasy onto. The object is not there. Because the world doesn't have stable objects which are always good and which we could have, or stable objects which are always bad, which we could avoid. The world is ceaselessly moving. Good things become bad, bad things become good. Friends become enemies, enemies become friends. How will you know? You have to be there, and you have to be there in the moment that things change from one form to another. But life would be much easier if the label was right. So that's what we believe. This is what attachment is. It's attachment to labeling, taking labeling to be a proof of the value of the contents. The contents are always empty, therefore the labels are always false. Once you really see that the Buddha's teaching of emptiness is correct, you know everything's empty. The difference between objects is only their label, because all of them are empty. So, some emptiness is very expensive, and some is very cheap. You can get very expensive empty wine and very cheap empty wine. You can get very expensive gold jewelry and very cheap gold-like jewelry. Now, as Mr. Ratner discovered when he told the truth about the value of his cheap jewelry, people want to believe that the cheap jewelry is really valuable. This is the same about our lives. We want to believe that things are better than they are because we can't face disappointment. Because we have already made an appointment with the dream factory that says, I will have a happy life. That's my appointment. We're all rushing to keep that appointment. My happy life, it's waiting for me. And somehow disappointment gets in the way. Who is doing this? It's not the disappointment that causes the trouble. It's the appointment. If we didn't have this appointment, we wouldn't be so worried. When we feel let down, disappointed, cheated, betrayed, it's because we thought we had a proper appointment. We had been appointed to that situation, that somehow it was inevitable. It was guaranteed that things were going to work out well for us. But who wrote that guarantee? This is illusion. This is the real meaning of attachment. To believe that there is a done deal somewhere, that things can be secured, guaranteed, laid out ahead of us in time, and all we have to do is go on our journey and we'll get there. Everything is impermanent. Therefore, don't appoint. Because when you appoint, you remove yourself from the moment. Of course, you need to know when you're going to the dentist. You need to know when your car has its MOT. There are practical things in the world. It's not about just living in some kind of bizarre laissez-faire, whatever comes on an outer level, because there is a certain kind of flow of continuity in life. Shops open and close. You have to be there at the right time. But really what it means is it's the emotional investment in the fantasy, this will be wonderful. We can't know. All we can ever say is, I will be open. I will be open. That's in the palm of your hand. You can say, I will be closed or I will be open. This we can do. But if we say, this will be wonderful, or I really need this, or I'm really going to have a good time, or I'm really looking forward to this, we don't know. We're looking forward to it now. So again, we're with half sentences. I'm really looking forward to it today at this time. Maybe tomorrow I'll already be getting a bit bored before it's arrived. I'll be thinking, God, why did I bother? But today I'm really excited. So what we're communicating is the arising of an ephemeral moment. I find myself suffused with joy and hope at this prospect for the moment. No guarantees. The truth of this statement has a sell-by date. The sell-by date is the next moment. If you continue to take this product after its sell-by date, you do so at your own risk. That's how it is. But we are like these new group of people, what are they called? Freebies. Free something. You know, the people who go behind the supermarkets and get out free clothes. The whole grouping of and free food. People who decide that industrial capitalism produces so much excess that you can live for free. But it's never like that. Sell-by dates really exist. They don't exist on sandwiches. You can eat them later. They don't exist on apples. You can eat them later, or at least you can smell. We have some good things up our nose that can tell us if things are off. What does have a sell-by date is thoughts. Thoughts which tell us about an immediate situation last as long as that moment. Ugh, this is horrible. Yeah, this is horrible. But if you extrapolate into a generalized category of all these of this species are horrible, you have made a category error. So, freeing the mind from mental furniture means recognizing that all naming and all labeling applies just to the immediacy of the moment. So, next moment empty, next moment empty. Each moment the world is new, it's fresh. And it's fresh because even in the moment, when you feel terrible, when you feel awful, when you feel betrayed, let down and despairing, this was a temporary coloration of the openness of yourself. You had not actually lost yourself. You have not actually been destroyed, because next moment there you are. If you had been destroyed, you wouldn't be there in the next moment. What is destroyed is the construction that you had hoped to install in that moment. I felt very let down. Huh? So who put you up? What were you doing up there anyway? Come down, don't you know it's dangerous? Don't climb trees. This is why we do meditation, is to observe these confectionaries in the mind, how we elaborate all kinds of projections, hopes, dreams and fantasies, which is a kind of clutter. It goes against the possibility of seeing things as they are. And seeing things as they are is the only real world we have any access to. We don't know. Everything else is just promises, and promises are often betrayed. So living in the moment means having less furniture. Not imagining that the past will give us guarantees of clarity for living in the present. And not believing that making plans for the future will help good times in the present to continue, or ensure that bad times in the present don't continue. To be attentive means to attend to the fact that moment by moment things arise and pass away. Impermanence is the most profound truth of the Buddha, because in impermanence we realize that we don't have so much work to do. Because everything passes, we don't need to hold things in place. Because everything passes, we don't need to push things away. You don't need to desperately keep hold of good situations. They came largely without you anyway. You don't desperately need to push away bad situations, because without your effort, they will go by themselves. So trusting impermanence is the really central thing. And we can do that. It's not a belief system, it's a quality of awareness. It's a quality of awareness. If you're aware, then you see the situation. It's like if you're driving a car, you have to read the road moment by moment. You have to keep your eye on the mirrors and what's in front of you, because it changes a lot. You have to see what is occurring. That's the only place we're alive. So in terms of the flow of the transmission, it's been the ability of people since the time of the teachings first entering into this world to awaken to this, to realize directly as an experience all the stuff which I experience as I, me and mine, and as you, and as houses and cars, all of this is without inherent self-essence. It's not true in and of itself, but it is a dynamic movement. The universe is a flow of experience. All we ever have is experience. There is nothing other than experience. all mathematics is an experience, all physics is an experience, all hospital operations are an experience. At this very moment, in the operating theatre, scalpels will be going into bodies, organs will be exposed. These are all processes. Nobody wants to have an operation that lasts 30 years. That would be very alarming. You know, an operation that lasts 12 hours has exhausted everyone beyond their limit. Some operations, 12 hours is about the ultimate limit, really. Usually they're much, much shorter. An operation is nothing but a flow of experience. They are doing something to me. Well, somebody's always doing something to us. People walk down the street and our bodies move. Somebody drives by and our ears go out to the noise. The rain falls and our shoulders bunch up. Somebody brings in some fresh cake and we go, From morning till night, somebody is always doing something to us. The cat walks in the garden and you say, oh, hello. Huh? The cat has called you out. The flower says, good morning. You say, good morning. Huh? This is our world. We are always in conversation, in relation with the world. And it never stops. This is the real meaning of flow. There are only two aspects to existence. Stillness, or nepa, and movement, or jua. And this movement is ceaseless. You will not find in this world of manifestation anything which is stable and reliable. You can look. If you find something, that's wonderful. But until now, nobody found anything reliable. Everything changes. What doesn't change is awareness itself, which is the nature of the mind, or the mind itself. It's very difficult to express this because all of our language is tilted towards the misidentification of processes as entities. So if we're talking of something which is not only not a process, but not an entity, it's much more difficult. The mind itself is something ungraspable, but what we are. When we start to look at this, and this is the essence of the transmission of flow, it's for us to find ourselves in the nature of that flow. In Tibetan it's called ngotro. Ngo means face, and tro means to show or to point out, to indicate. So ngotro means to have pointed out or to awaken to your own face. Now, we all have a face, but we don't really know our face. One thing is guaranteed, you will never see your own face. You have only ever seen a reflection of your face or a photograph of your face. Your own face is completely a mystery to you. But your own face is public property for everyone else. Everyone else knows your face and you never know your face. So the face as representation is what we normally have for ourselves. But if you will really want to see your face, what is that? That's a different kind of seeing. If we look in the mirror and if we look at this cup, it's the same kind of thing. Here is a mug. We can look at this, we see its shape, we can describe its colors. Then we go and stand in front of a mirror and we see a reflection. It's the reflection of our face. So we think, I can see my reflection. But except what we really feel is, that's me. So it is as if it seems to be, this is me in front of myself, but it's only a reflection. The question now is, how can I see my face without looking at it? What would it mean to see one's face? In this sense, to see one's face is to be one's face. To move from the perception of objects, of entities, to the direct, unmediated quality of presence as one's face. to feel one's face from the inside, but also, as it were, from the outside simultaneously. In the way traditionally we do this is we listen to a description and try to feel the quality of that description as ourselves. Because this face is our own real nature. In Zen tradition they call it the face you had before you were born. It means the face which is always there, the face by which you face yourself even before you had a face. It means your mind as it is, awareness itself. The quality of clarity and luminosity through which you reveal everything. Everything you see, the ceiling, the floor, the sounds of the cars, the different shapes and colors of each other's bodies. All of this is revealed through this infinite open clarity of the mind. So what is this mind? It is naked. The mind itself has no covering. As our ego self, as I, me, myself, we always have covering. Who are you? Oh, I am. Then we put our name. And where are you from? We tell people where we are from. And what do you do? We tell people what we do. Constantly, the ego is searching for clothing. Because the ego needs clothing because it's empty. The ego is nothing but a coat hanger, constantly arraying itself in different kinds of garments. But the mind itself has no garments and no need of garments. It is just nothing at all. That is to say, all the root of our intelligence, our clarity, our aliveness, our awareness is not anything. Not anything. I am nothing. And yet, of course, because I am nothing, I am everything. So here we sit in this room. Where is this room? Is it inside us or outside us? Silly question. The room and us, we, each of us, are born with the room. This is your room. When you look around, this is you. This is your world. Your world is immediately here with you. How could this world be in your mind if your mind was in your head? Not possible. The mind, because it is naked and has no clothing on it, where is its boundary? Where is its limit? Where is its top or its bottom? The mind has no limit. It is infinite, not finite, not an entity. Here we are sitting in this room now. We have perceptions, we hear things, we have thoughts. Each of these is arising in the mind. No thought or feeling is ever the limit of the mind. It is something moving through the mind. Just as clouds move through the sky, the clouds seem to limit the sky. On a grey day, when you look up, you don't see any blue sky at all. The sky seems very low. There is just this grey stuff. It's quite oppressive coming towards you. And it appears like a real limit. And then the wind blows and the clouds move. And what was the real limit is now gone. It was never a real limit. The sky itself doesn't have any limit. In the same way, your mind sometimes is caught up with clouds. I feel like shit. I feel so lonely. I feel stupid. How could I have done that? These feelings arise in us with such intensity that they shape ourselves. I am just this thing. I've fucked up again. I can't believe it. How could I? And we feel small and turned in on ourselves and diminished, and the world seems to be grinding on us. This is just clouds passing by. The mind itself is always naked. Whatever clouds come, whatever clothes are thrown into the sky, they hover for a second and then they're gone. The mind, we ourselves, are infinite. So within this infinity, everything is coming and going. And no finite substance can ever block infinity. Infinity is always, by definition, above and beyond any totalization, any adding up of all the markers of finitude. So this is the nakedness of the mind. Now the mind is also raw. It is not something which has been processed or prepared in any way. It hasn't been cooked by causes and conditions. We, each of us, have already been alive many years. And in these years we have had experience which have marked us. They've marked this flesh face of ours. We have wrinkles, we've got scratches on our bodies. We feel a bit worn down by life. We feel beleaguered, troubled, made heavy. All of this cooks us in particular ways. Some of us in this life have had very bad luck. We are like traditional English cooking, hospital cooking, school dinner cooking. We have been boiled and boiled and boiled until there is no vitamin and no flavor left. And we feel just like a damp rag, just at the end of it, had enough, ready to go. I don't hope for anything more. Many people find themselves in this situation. But the mind itself has never been cooked. The mind itself is always raw, like cutting into a beautiful fresh apple. The water's little sparklets coming out. This is the mind, always fresh. When we observe the dullness which arises, this dullness is not the mind itself, it's something revealed by the clarity of the mind itself. If you hold up a mirror on a bright summer's day and you can see the trees and so on in the park, the mirror looks bright and shining and wonderful. If you then take that same mirror and take it into a dark room and close the door, and you look into the mirror, what will you see? Nothing. Then you say, this is a completely useless mirror. It doesn't show anything. The mirror is doing its job. It's showing you what's there. It's showing you darkness. So when your life feels like shit, this is the ever-shining mirror of your mind showing you shit. Shit's there, what do you expect it to show? Not Smarties. That's what it is. It's showing you what's there, it's not showing you what it is. Huh? When you look in a mirror, you see the reflection, you never see the mirror. From the beginning of time, nobody has ever seen a mirror. They've never seen what a mirror is, because the mirror never shows itself. It's like one of these old John le Carrier novels, you know, with Smiley and these double agents and double agents. The mirror is like that. It has so many alter egos and disguises and subterfuges. It never shows itself. The mirror always shows something else. So, what does your mind show you? It shows you its own brilliance in illuminating something else. What is the something else? It's the energy of the mind. Your hopes, your dreams, your fantasies, your fears, your emotions, your sensations. Can you hold these? No. They're always going. How long does a thought last? Not very long. How long does an emotion last for? If you really look at it, not very long. Emotions are built up by rapid spiralings of repeated sequences. The actual emotion itself is just there and gone. So, the mind as something fresh and naked means uncooked, unconditioned, unlimited. Whatever is arising is not the mind itself. But if somebody was to say, you're really stupid, we wouldn't like that. Because we would feel they're defining me. And maybe we feel from our side there's some truth in it. So our anxiety and their contemptuous comment lock together, and we feel pinned. Oh God, is that what you really think about me? Oh, I'm sorry. And you see people, they kind of slow down and they stumble because they feel somebody's got me. They've got my number. They've summed me up. They know who I am. Rest assured, this is bullshit. It is always wrong. Nobody has ever got your number because you don't have a number. You don't have a number. People act as if somehow you're going into Auschwitz and you're going to get a tattoo on your arm. We're not actually living in a torture camp. We're not living there. We are fortunate beings. Everything which has ever been inscribed onto us has been inscribed in skin which falls off. All our skin is always coming off, isn't it? You know, there is this short story of Kafka, The Penal Colony, which is a very interesting story, in which he describes coming to this island. It's a very complex story, but the essence of it is that on this island there is this incredible wooden machine. And when prisoners are taken there, under certain conditions, they are put into this machine, and all their crimes are written into their skin by iron needles. This is how we feel in life, isn't it? We feel tattooed. We feel marked. We feel incisions on us. Some of these incisions have been done by the horrible deeds of others, but some of them have been done by ourselves, where we feel we've screwed up, we've messed up, we've done shameful things, we've hurt other people. There's a laceration. There's this scar tissue all over us. We carry the marks of our deeds, and each of these marks, as with the healing of a wound, it brings a certain deadening and a toughening of the skin, so we become kind of constrained and diminished. We'd like to believe that we are open and free and fresh, but actually we know ourselves too well. We know our faults, and we think, well, I may have Buddha nature, but I still do these things, and I don't know why. I'd like to believe that, but I'm not really a very nice person. You know, only last week. Da, 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 da. Oh, yeah. Oh, last week. So where is last week? It's in my chart sheet. Where's my chart sheet? Look. Printed on my chest. I am willing to carry all my crimes forever. And if you want to know about me, read my crimes. When I first worked in a psychiatric hospital, I remember us seeing this patient, one of my first patients, and he said, "Have you read my file?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, you have to read my file to know about me." And we are like that. We have this file, this karmic summary of all the sins and bad things we've done. And we think, this is me. So I can't be open to you because I don't really want you to know me, because if you knew me, you'd read through this document and then you wouldn't like me. So I can't really trust that you like me, because if you really knew, then this is terrible. This is an absolute tragedy. Here we are thinking from the very beginning our nature is pure, but we don't believe it. We think from the very beginning our nature is sewer, that we are just some kind of movement of shit and piss. All our faults, all our demerits, all our sins, all our failings, this is who we really are. This is very, very problematic. Because all of the actions that we have ever done, or that other people have done to us, are gone. The traces of them are traces we hold. We hold on to these things. And because we believe in them, they don't get expunged. They don't get removed. The whole function of doing purification practice, like Six Realm practice or Dorji Sempa or any of the many, many purification practices, is that you believe you can be pure. And the reason many people don't get any benefit from doing all their prostrations and purification practices is that they cannot believe that they are pure. that they are so convinced that they are fundamentally bad that it would appear to be the ultimate sin to imagine they were good. Now this is very sad and very sick. Many people do this from a philosophical, theological point of view. They think only God is good. We are all fallen creatures. From a Buddhist point of view, this is a very, very sad and wrong misunderstanding. Who is God? Each of us is God. There is no God somewhere else. There is no God outside who is going to reward you or punish you. Rewarding and punishing is done by the nature of your own deeds. If you act in a good way, good things will arise. If you act in a bad way, bad things will arise. If you stay in a state of meditation, it will be the same whether good things are arising or bad things are arising. If you don't have a state of meditation, when good things arise, you go ha 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 ha, and when bad things arise, you go hoo 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 hoo. That's exactly what we said in the morning. One ground, two paths. One path is ah, and the other is ha ha hoo hoo, ha ha hoo. It's just that. That's our main choice. To recognize primordial purity means you, each of you. It means me. It doesn't mean it's something I've got and you haven't got. It means we all have it. And we have it without trying. No matter how bad you are, you can't lose it. No matter how good you are, you can't create it. If it wasn't there from the very beginning, you wouldn't have it. Naropa says this, Garabdorji says this, Padmasambhava says this, Milarepa says this. You won't find any of these wonderful saints and heroes saying anything different. It doesn't come from anywhere. It is how it is. Openness is just how it is. Confusion is a movement in openness. As Padmasambhava says, it's as if you're walking out in the fields and you see a stick or a scarecrow and you think, oh, it's a man. It's not a man. It's a pole or a scarecrow. You see a man where there is no man. Who has done this? Your mind. What has come into existence? Nothing. What do you take to be the case? That there is a man. From the very beginning, there have been no entities. You say, there is a man, there is a car, there is a house. That doesn't make men, houses, cars. Who is saying that? This is the energy of the openness of existence. Energy is always moving and creating illusory forms which, if you observe them, will vanish by themselves. And then you can feel very light, very easy, happily moving through sad times and happy times. There is nobody who has happiness all the time. Big lamas like the Karmapa don't have a happy time all the time. Do you think the Dalai Lama is happy? Imagine being the Dalai Lama, journeying around the world on and off airplanes, meeting reporters, doing interviews, doing initiations. He has had a long and very, very, very hard life. But you don't see him complaining. He seems quite in his life. That's the fruit of his practice, that he can be there 1 minute talking to new refugees from Tibet, in despair, crying with them, touched and moved, and the next minute, very friendly and laughing. He's not thinking, oh my God, all my refugees, I'll never smile again. He's crying with the refugee and then laughing with someone else. Life is flowing. He is quite genuine when he cries, and he's quite genuine when he laughs. He's not carrying the marks of experience. He's not bemoaning his fate that he has lost Tibet. He's thinking, oh well, maybe something will happen. Whereas for me, growing up in Scotland, we were still crying for Bonnie Prince Charlie. And Bonnie Prince Charlie, was drunken, syphilitic, dying in the gutter in Paris, was a useless tosser. But we still cry for him. This is the difference between attachment and openness. So, our nature, here at this very time, on a Saturday afternoon, when it's hot, you maybe feel a bit tired, a bit sweaty, these are phenomena arising and passing. Your own nature is empty. Emptiness is the infinity of awareness, a clear, simple, pure presence within which all experience is arising ceaselessly. Part of what arises as experience is your identity as this person or that person, as John or Mary, being your age, being your weight, liking the foods you do, liking the clothes you do. All the things which seem to define who you are arise as ornaments of this endless openness. All the factors which, if you don't recognize the ground, will be prison bars, will be ways of bondage and attachment and obscuration, these same phenomena, when you recognize that everything is pure from the very beginning, will be like beautiful flowers arising in the sky. And you will be shining with whatever happens. Like in the paintings you can see sometimes of the Buddha, or just when he's becoming the Buddha, Prince Shakyamuni sitting under the Bodhi tree in his meditation. And the Maras, the demons, come and they start to fire arrows at him. And as the arrow approaches him, it turns into flowers. This can be our experience too. You can experience your depression as a flower, your anxiety as a flower, your sadness as a flower, your loneliness as a flower. Some experience arises in you, and you say, oh, if you just stay with that, oh, whew. Remember, in Holland, 250, 300 years ago, they had this huge intoxication with tulips, and people paid a fortune for tulips. And the tulip that got the highest amount of money was the black tulip. So if people could pay millions and millions of guilders for one black tulip bulb, why would you not enjoy a dark moment in your mind? I'm so useless. Self-pity, it's delicious, isn't it? It's absolutely exquisite. Nothing could be more decadent. So, don't think anything which occurs will poison you. Don't think anything which occurs will save you. The answer doesn't lie in the object. The object is an ornament. The object is an enjoyment. The object is always flowing. And with that object is our ordinary conscious subject, tumbling together. What remains is awareness. Awareness is always there. This morning we were here. Your mood was different. Your posture was different. I was talking about different things. So in the midst of that, we had a particular experience. Now in the afternoon, we have a different kind of experience. Who is having the experience? Who is the one who experienced the morning? Who is the one who experiences the afternoon? If your mood was different in the morning, were you a different person in the morning? So if you are still the same person, what is it which is the same? If your thoughts have changed, the sensation in your body has changed, and your emotion has changed. That which is left over when all that has departed is gone, that is awareness. Awareness is the residue which is the primordial mother. It looks like the leftover, but it's always the ancestor. It's always already there, and it always remains. Therefore, don't try to build your house out of momentary constructions. Therefore, when you realize that, then whatever it is that you think you are, you can enjoy it. We can enjoy being old and being tired. We can enjoy, say, now my left hip started to get sore, so I started to walk with a little hurple. That was quite nice. Because normally I'm walking like this, so now I'm going like this. Oh, this could be nice. And my mother, she has a Zimmer frame, so I start thinking, oh, in the future I also will get one of these. When I grow up and get very big, I'm going to have a Zimmer frame. Like that. Everything is just, what is it? Shall we take it seriously? Backache, not being able to sleep. What do these things mean? What? I've lost my life. I don't know who I am. Nice. You don't know who you are. Huh? Things aren't the way I thought they would be. Thank God for that. Now we can put into question, why would you imagine that your thoughts should determine the world? This is an omnipotent fantasy. So, our mind, our nature, open from the very beginning, pure, uncontaminated by any thought, feeling or sensation, unconditioned. Our real nature is not a construct. It is not made out of anything, and yet it is the mother of all things. The ground source of everything which arises is not made of anything which arises from it. Of course, we children don't make our parents. Our parents make us. The ground is our mother, and the ground is ourselves. So we constantly give rise to ourselves. So the practice of the meditation, which we'll do after we have a break and get a bit of fresh air, the practice of the meditation is to relax into this openness, and moment by moment, as experience occurs, just to give it space and to observe how we have a tendency to locate ourselves in relation to that experience. Some of that location is in terms of physical sensation. Maybe it feels like the back of your head or something around your heart. Could be anything. Sometimes in relation to a thought. The ego will always position itself in relation to experience. I am having this experience. But what we take as the ego, the notion of I, me, myself, is itself an arising. You don't have to destroy your ego or get rid of it. The ego is not the problem. The ego is overinflated by the misidentification that it is the true sight of being, the true sight of identity. It's not the whole story. The ego suffers in the way that a parental child suffers. If the parents are unavailable or delinquent, the child will have to try to face tasks which are beyond its capacity. The child won't have an adult around to help it settle, to reassure it. And it will have to be trying to take care of big people who should be taking care of it. This is what happens when ignorance arises in the mind. The ego, which is the child of awareness, has lost its mummy and now thinks, well, I'm in charge. So it's running around the house, setting fire to the furniture, pissing on the sofa, because the child doesn't know what to do. This is the nature of samsara. We are mad children with this huge responsibility, because actually our nature is infinity. But we've lost connection with that infinity. So we are the finite pretending to be infinite. That's what the ego is. I am this, I am that, I am, I am, I am. The ego is always saying, I am. It'll be, I am anything. Tony Blair says, I am the Prime Minister of this country. How could this be? What mad illusion is this? So, I am can appropriate anything. George Bush can say, I am the most powerful man in the world. What is the basis for this? Absolute madness, isn't it? Absolutely mad that this thug is the most powerful man in the world. But it's undeniable he is the most powerful man in the world in some ways. Or at least the most powerful puppet in the world. So I am can claim anything. That is because it has an infinite capacity hidden just below the surface of being finite. The one who says, I am hungry. The one who says, I need a pee. The one who says, God, this is all very complicated. That one is itself the infinite awareness. But it doesn't recognize it's the infinite awareness. So it has a sense of being infinite while actually being finite, because it's a momentary arising. So the momentary arising is being suffused with the energy of the infinite, and of course has a hyperinflation. This is what narcissism is. It's the wind of infinity blowing into a very small, weak vessel, who, having exploded up like a big toad, doesn't know how to breathe out. This is what the ego is doing all the time, pretending, playing these games of illusion, not being able to step back, to apologize, to let go, to confess. So, again, the next last point before we take a break is about Rangdrol, about self-liberation. All phenomena which can be, which are sites of attachment, whether we see them as object or subject, are self-liberating. But the key point we need to do is on the experience of openness to allow the self-liberation of all the points of ego's familiar identification. Because this ego, like a child that's been left with too much responsibility, is always a bit anxious. Like in India, you see these young girls, maybe 8 years of age, and they're carrying their mama's baby on their hip. And they're wandering around all day long looking after this baby. Well, they don't know exactly everything to do with a small baby. So they've got to be responsible when they're hardly able to be responsible for themselves. They can't run around and be free because they now have this responsibility. The ego is over-responsible. But if you ask somebody who's over-responsible to relax, they'll find it very difficult, because they will imagine, if I relax, something terrible will happen. It's all up to me. This is what the ego feels. It's all up to me. If I don't hold it together, it'll fall apart. But sweetie, it's always been falling apart. That's what impermanence is. Everything's impermanent. It's always falling apart. This is self-liberation. This is where the ego can't get it right, because the ego will always try to resist reality by imagining that it's got to keep things tidier than they can be. So our ego is like an anxious child with OCD. You know, it's obsessive, it's compulsive, it's driven to do things when actually it simply needs to let go. And let go of itself. Retirement. Retirement is difficult for many people, because who will I be if I'm not useful? You'll be useless. I don't want to be useless. Why not? Why not be useless? The flowers of the field toil not. It's just there, just there. As Milton says, you know, in that wonderful poem on his blindness, they also serve who only stand and wait. But we are driven to this notion that if we're not busy, if we're not constructing something, if we're not doing something, if we are not creating value, we will have no value. This is the prime anxiety of the ego. The ego knows it is empty and fears that emptiness as if it's a kind of bad smell, as if it's shat its pants in some way. And so it has to cover it up and cover it up by showing, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good, I'm useful, I'm useful, I'm useful. But it's actually empty. And this emptiness is not shameful. It's the emptiness of all phenomena. So this is why ignorance is so painful, because ignorance is the belief that things are truly existing when they're not. And so if you buy into that lie, so much suffering arises from trying to maintain the illusion, and then to make yourself worthwhile by showing that you're good and kind and honest and reliable and useful. And all you're doing is breathing in and out like a cow in the field. What are the wonderful things we do? not more than a bag of beans. And after a while we get very old and we can't do them anymore. When I go to see my old mother, she always says, "Oh, I can't even make you a cup of tea." Sweetie, you're my mum. But I should be doing something. Why? Her whole life, I should be doing something. It's heartbreaking. I love her so much. She did so much for me, but the main thing she did for me was smile at me and laugh with me and hold my hand. That was more important than cups of tea. And that's the whole thing, isn't it? That from the very beginning, all phenomena are woven together, connected. That connection is the natural perfection and integration of everything. But we, being in the Garden of Eden, imagining we're out of the Garden of Eden, try to create concrete tenements as a substitute. This is the ego's domain. Very sad. So after the break we do some meditation and try to bring this into our existence. Okay? Have a break for maybe, say, 20 minutes. Okay, I'll just say a little bit more about emptiness and non-duality before we go into the meditation practice. When it says all phenomena are empty, it doesn't mean that nothing exists at all, because clearly lots of things are here. What we have is appearances which don't have an inherent self-nature. An inherent self-nature would be a nature which defines itself from the inside, that it is self-validating. So, for example, here's a watch. Now, we can all agree that this is a watch because we've seen watches before and we know what their function is. But we had to learn what that was. If you have a small child of 3 and you give them this watch, they will whack it because they like whacking things. And then your expensive watch will break. So the child of 3 doesn't know what a watch is. It can see this. It sees it in terms of its shininess and its possibility of moving. It sees the shape. It can taste it, lick it, and so on. But it doesn't have a concept of watch. We have learned the concept of watch. At a certain period of time in our lives, we learned how to tell the time. And then we became at home with watches. And then at a certain age, you get your first watch. And then you get used to wearing a watch, if you do wear a watch. And we start to feel that the watchness of the watch is in the watch. What is it? It's a watch. Where is the watchness of the watch? Well, it has to be inside this. That is to say, it appears to us that the watch validates itself as a watch because it just is a watch. What else would it be? It's a watch. But this is not how it is. If it was just a watch, then somebody would know that immediately. Even little babies can work out what food is. By the age of 3, you can know what to stuff in your mouth. But this, you have to learn what it is. So the watchness of the watch is in culture and language. It is not in the object per se. So this is like what we were looking at in the morning, that the subject creates half at least of the object, but takes it that the object exists by itself. We only see this as a watch because we know what watches are. That is to say we take our watch matrix in our head, all that we know about watches, and we apply it to the phenomena that I've got in my hand, which then allows us to make sense of this, to tell the time by it and so on. So if you were to come and look closely at this watch, you could probably guess pretty well how much it cost, because we're used to working in an economic sphere and we've got a rough sense of how much things cost. We would place it in its social context in terms of the style, its economic context, and so on. These are things which exist in us, in our memory bank, which we project onto the watch, but take to be in the watch. So we might say, looking at someone's watch, that's a very expensive watch. Now, very expensive for whom? Very expensive for the speaker. Maybe the person who's got the watch has just won the lottery but hasn't told you. And for them it's a very cheap watch. 1,000 quid. But for you think, whoa, that's a very expensive watch. So we take expensive as being a quality of the watch. Expensive is a relation in the economic field. For a very wealthy person, it's not expensive. For a very poor person, it's incredibly expensive. It's not expensive in and of itself. It is only relationally expensive. Is that making sense? So this is really what emptiness is. It is the fact that all phenomena exist within very, very complex matrices of relations. Many relationships meeting together create this phenomena. The phenomena is not there in itself. Just as when you go to the theatre, the cast come onto the stage and they start to dance or sing or have a play, and through that we understand this is whatever, this is Swan Lake the ballet, or this is La Traviata, or this is a play, this is King Lear. And King Lear manifests through the interaction of these people saying these lines. When they stop speaking, King Lear is over. There is no King Lear. King Lear has been created by the fact that we might know about theatre. We go to the theatre, they are the actors, they have a play, it's all performed. All of these lines of belief and interpretation are meeting together and creating the play. If the audience didn't know about the theatre, then if they didn't understand what theatre was, then the play would just not really exist, because it has to exist in the minds of an audience. It has to be observed. And the audience make the play in the way that the actors make the play. Two fields meet together. The attention of the audience and their willingness to open themselves to the play. The identification of the actors with the characters create together this construction of a play, and everybody's in this play for as long as it runs. But that performance, captivating as it was, has no inherent structure. It is simply the juxtaposition of many factors which create something which appears greater than the sum of its parts. And not only greater than the sum of its parts, but other than the sum of its parts. Because it doesn't appear to be a construction. It doesn't appear to be artificial. It appears to be a thing in itself. So on the level of analysis, you can apply this to cars, to houses, to your own body, to the work you do, to the food that you cook. And you can see how you go from an understanding of the production to the sense of something seeming to exist. So you can take potatoes and boil them and mash them, and you can get some white fish and some capers and some cream and some tomatoes, and you prepare that, and you put the potato on top and maybe some cheese, and you put it in the oven, and you have a fish pie. And you look at it and you think, fish pie. It was built up of all of these ingredients. None of these ingredients in itself is the sufficient cause of a fish pie. All of them meeting together create the fish pie, and yet fish pie seems to be just a fish pie. At a certain point, it's as if there is a kind of eraser which rubs out all the traces leading up to it. A bit like in school, you would do a draft of how you were going to do the sum, and then you would rub out the preparation bit. so that it looked as if it was just that. And that's what the mind is doing all the time. It's rubbing out the preparation. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. So that although we know that things like the shirts we wear are created, maybe there was cotton and the cotton went to a factory and then the factory took the yarn to weavers and the weavers then made it and it was cut up by a designer and sold in a shop. We know there are all these complex chains of events that give rise to the fact that you're wearing what you're wearing, yet when you go to your cupboard to take it out, oh, I'll wear that shirt. And its history, its past is all gone. It is just that shirt. And it is that encapsulation, that decontextualization of space and time, which gives the felt sense of things being truly existing in themselves. We become forgetful of the causal change, the causal chains which have given rise to this phenomena and which are inseparable from the phenomena. That's the whole thing. You can't separate the watch from the history of watchmaking. At a certain period of time, when pocket watches, carryable watches first came on the market, they were very, very expensive. Only very wealthy people could have them. And then gradually they become very, very cheap. That's due to changes in technology. So we are part of the history of materials, of fashion, whatever clothes we wear. Everything we do is caught up in these incredible links of connection. When we see the connection, we realize that the extrapolated or the cut off, the isolated seeming entity is an illusion. It is empty of inherent self-nature. That is to say, it's not a watch in itself. It is a watch because of the history of watches, the particular, I have this watch because I lost my previous watch. So I bought this watch in an airport because I needed another watch. And this was the best of the watches they had available within the price that I was willing to pay. So this particular watch has that history for me. And everything you see, all the paintings here, the way the colors were chosen, the lighting, all of these will have a particular history. They are here because of finite decisions, which were the result of previous finite decisions, the result of previous finite decisions, and so on for thousands and thousands of years. Plus, of course, the undercurrent of karma, which we don't recognize, which is also flowing through this. So emptiness from the point of view of analysis is like this. Whatever we take to be truly existing in itself is not so. It is always arising due to causes and conditions. We ourselves, without our parents having had sex together, we would not have come into existence. We came into existence out of our mother's body. We were fed, most of us, in the first instance, on our mother's body. We have been dependent on these situations. We then start to see ourselves as separate beings. But we forget often that we have families, and these families go back through generation after generation after generation. Many people don't know their great-grandparents' names now. But if these people hadn't existed, you wouldn't be here. Your existence is connected with all of these people. So although we feel I am just me, myself, I have my own existence, my own life, I'm going to live life on my terms, this very life carries within it all these other people. We can't take scissors and just sort of cut off the bits that we don't like. So this is emptiness. The emptiness of all that appears to be something in itself. The corollary or the inevitable other side of that is everything is connected to everything else. There are no self-existing phenomena. We live absolutely interconnected with every other phenomena. We can't stand apart. Therefore, what we do affects others, and what others do affects us. the idea of autonomy, of being true to ourselves, of having our own ground to stand on, is an illusion. Therefore, we have these two functions. Wisdom is to recognize the emptiness of all phenomena, including ourselves. And compassion is to engage with phenomena as part of the field of phenomena. Not to enter from some privileged place, but to enter from the place in which we find ourselves, whatever that would be. And we speak from that. Linked with, and there are a lot of books on emptiness, and you can read these and do more exploration. The key thing, I think, is to analyze phenomena as you meet them. When you're walking, when you're talking, when you're cooking, whenever you're doing any activity, observe how it comes into existence. The second factor is non-duality. Non-duality means whatever categories we set up as being truly existing are formulated on the basis of mutual exclusion. That is to say, if something is good, it's not bad. If something is bad, it's not good. If someone is male, they're not female. If they're female, they're not male. If they're English, they're not Scottish. If they're Scottish, they're not English. It's dealing with binary opposition, the tension between oppositional categories, which is used to define inclusion and exclusion. So, here we have on the wall this color yellow. Now, we have reason to believe that this is the same paint used all the way around on these walls, but because of the way the light is moving, this color here looks much more golden in a sort of orangey tint than at the back of the room, where it looks much lighter, which again would show the absence of inherent self-nature, because it's the same paint, but it looks different according to the causes and conditions of the amount of light that's coming into the room. But we say this is yellow, and next to the yellow is blue. It is yellow because it's not blue, it's not green, it's not pink. Why is yellow yellow? Nobody can say. It's simply a conventional category. If you work with colors, if you worked in the fashion industry, you would use much more nuanced identifiers of shading. And the same if you work in an art studio. You would have a lot more nuanced words for subtleties of shading, but normally we speak in rather crude terms because it fits what we need to do. And in the end, we don't really know why blue is blue and yellow is yellow. Scientists could tell us about vibrations of light and absorbency and so on, but that wouldn't necessarily tell us why we have the emotional response to these colors. But basically, yellow is not the same as blue. It excludes blue, and therefore yellow is everything which is not anything else. All that is not something else will be yellow, because yellow is what's left over when you exclude everything else. And the same applies for red, the same applies for blue. All people who are not Scottish are the people who define what is Scottish, because they're not Scottish. So if you remove all the people who are not Scottish, the people who are left over will be Scottish. If all the women leave the room, all the men will be left in the room. If you ask someone, what is a woman? Well, even Sigmund Freud didn't know the answer to that. So, we don't need to work it out. All we need to know is men go this way, women go that way. So the women will go that way, the men will go that way. That is to say, we operate on the basis of conventional categories to separate phenomena when we don't understand what they are. We are real dumb clucks. You know, we use all these words, but we have no idea really what they mean. And that is what duality is. Duality creates meaning by setting propositions against each other. the basic proposition is self and other. Dogs in, needs in. As soon as I hold to I am me, myself, I am the one that truly exists, then all that is not me is you. And then inside the field of you, there's this particular you and that particular you. But from my point of view, you're all just you. You can't be me. I can't be you. But for you, you are I. Because you say I. In fact, of course, I am the only I. Because you can't be I, because I am I. And yet you falsely claim to be I and tell me that I'm you. How dare you? Because you know who you are. You're you and I'm I. I'm me. You can see in that how conventional it is. By convention here we mean this is an artificial construction. There is no inherent self-nature in it. That's why grammar is so difficult to learn, isn't it? You're trying to work out what is the first person. Well, that's me. But so how come I can say I, but you can also say I? Oh, we're just using the first person singular. Yeah, but it's me. Because it feels like me. I, me, myself, mine, feel as if they are referring to something substantial. In fact, they are a linguistic category which, when we participate in it and use it, allows us to differentiate self and other. If we didn't have these differentiating matrices, we wouldn't be able to do that. One of the side consequences of that is each of us believes that we exist as I, me, myself, while recognizing that other people do as well. But I can never know the subjectivity of another. I can only ever know the other as an object. I can feel the impact of the subjectivity of another, that you are alive and I can have a sense of you, but to know you, to know about you, will be different from how I experience myself. However, all of that is constructed through language. So non-duality means to drop the attention below the categories which are set up in language and which set one thing against another, and to realize that these so-called things have no inherent self-nature, and through that to recognize, okay, if they are not existing in themselves, what is the ground of their existence? Who is the one that said men, women, good, bad, summer, winter, Ford Transit, Mercedes-Benz? Who is the one who says these things? I do. Who is the one who says I? I am. Who is the one who says I am to the question, who is the one who says I am? I am. Oh, this looks like a royal road to nowhere. Who is the one who says I am? That's the question for the meditation. You can see how you cheat yourself in that one. You can vanish around chasing your own tail if you apply the answer, I am, I am, I am. But this I is only created because it's not you. The basis of self is other. The basis of other is self. There is no inherent self-nature. So the answer to the question, who is the one who says I am, cannot be I am, because I am is another proposition. Propositions are proposed by someone. They are not self-propositional in the way that this watch is not self-existing. The watch doesn't make itself, and the fact that we say I am doesn't make us I am. It's simply a conventional title. Now this is a little bit tricky. So, in the meditation, we do this 3 hours, we relax, and in this state of relaxation, we start to look. Whenever there's an experience, whether it's a thought or a feeling or a question, an answer, whatever it would be, stay present with the moment of that experience and try to establish who is the one who is having the experience. Who is the experiencer of this? And when an answer comes, see if it remains. Because if the experience is experienced by an experiencer who vanishes, then who will be the experiencer of the next experience? It can't be that last experiencer because they've already gone, which would imply that each experience has a new experiencer. So who is the experiencer of the fact that the experience and the experiencer keep vanishing? Yeah? This is the big door into yourself. This is the other way of asking, who are you? You are the one who, from the very beginning, has been present with everything that has happened. You were present when you were a baby, you were present when you were a child, as you became an adult, you've been present through happy times and sad times. All the feelings that you've had have gone. All the thoughts you've had have gone. But you are still here. So who is the one who is still here when all the nouns, adverbs and adjectives have passed away? Yeah? This is awareness itself. So this is what we're looking at. What is our nature? This naked face. Okay? So we do the 3-hour practice and we relax into that state and just be with whatever is there. Okay. So clearly, experience continues. It continues as before. It's not as if meditation is going to kind of refurbish the inside of your head. The thoughts and feelings and so on continue. What one is shifting is the relationship from them. Moving from the normal movement, which is either to push away what we don't like or to absorb into us the things that we do like. Here, again and again, just relax and open and allow phenomena to manifest. Sometimes clear, sometimes not clear, sometimes clear. And each time you find yourself slipping into the phenomena, as far as you can, observe what happens. There is not much space. You're in it, and when you're in it, it moves on and takes you on a little journey, and then it goes and you're left there. It's like kind of hitchhiking. You're not quite sure how you're going to get there. And after a while, if it's wet and cold, you get in a car because it's going somewhere, because you want to be out of the rain. And that's where the mind is going, on these very torturous journeys. Now, you can go to the side of control and you say, I want the clarity of imposing control. I want to decide where I'm going to go and what I'm going to do. This is also useful. This is the kind of meditation that we would use if we were observing the breath and trying to keep a simple focus, or if we were doing a tantric visualization. Because there you would decide, I'm going to focus my mind on being Chenrezi, for example. I'm going to learn the visualization, maybe memorize the chanting, and I'm going to recite the mantra. And these are all things that I can do. I can apply knowledge to activity, and that will bring a result. Or if you were doing a Zen kind of sitting, in many of the paths you would be looking at a particular koan. You would have some object to engage your mind with. But here, the object of attention is always whatever presents itself. We're not trying to change the content. What we're trying to do is not to take up a position towards it. So, say for example, this room here was a restaurant, and you were the head waiter in charge of the restaurant. You might have some sub-waiters, some of whose job is to deliver food, other whose job is to clear the tables. You would be observing who is coming in, you would be keeping an eye on the speed of delivery, whether people are kept waiting, and you would be orchestrating the pacing of the whole restaurant. So you would need to have a panoramic vision about what is going on. You couldn't get too caught up in any one detail because your zone of operation is the whole restaurant. Each of the waiters will have certain covers or tables that they need to attend to. But the head waiter, the person in charge, has to see that the whole operation is going smoothly. It's the same with our mind. We are used to being the waiter. We're delivering the things that we like and taking away the things we don't like. This is what we're doing. Clearing tables, filling them up, emptying them, filling them up, emptying them. Now, we want to just step back from that. Take a little bit of promotion. What we're concerned with is not the particularities of what food is on what table, but the flow. We want there to be a free and easy flow of attentive service through the restaurant. So not getting absorbed in the detail, not just thinking it's fine, but having an awareness of all the movements, but not fussing and footering and getting involved. Does that make sense? Of course, most of the time we do get involved. We get sucked into these things because consciousness That is to say, the sense that I am having this experience, because consciousness is always self-reflexive. It always refers back to itself. Consciousness always takes an object. So, this is my watch. I am conscious of the fact that this is my watch. But when I say, this is my watch, the direction of my meaning is not just out towards this object. It's also got a boomerang which is coming back to me. It's making a statement about me as the owner of the watch just as much as it is about the watch. So every time we speak about phenomena in the world, we're strengthening our sense of ourselves as I, me, myself. Huh? This is how consciousness as part of duality, as a subject which always takes an object, is operating. It feeds on every interaction by creaming off a kind of profit, which is the validation that I truly exist. When we move from consciousness, from Nampa Shepa, towards Rigpa, towards an awareness which is not a thing, which is not located anywhere, and which doesn't stand in relation to anything else, it's very different. Because you're not having this experience. The experience is displaying itself to an awareness which is not here or there, it's not inside, it's not outside, it's not up, it's not down. It's, nobody can say, unspeakable, inexpressible. Everything's going on, and we are like the madman on a hill. We can't speak anything. Spaced out. Hedewa, we don't know. We know nothing. Everything's going on, we have everything, but what have we got? We can't say. That's why they say in the Tao Te Ching, those who know don't speak, those who speak don't know. When we speak, we are creating exactly the proof we haven't a clue what's going on. Of course, you can speak from openness, but then you're not so identified with it. So, we'll come to an end soon today. When we go out into the world and we meet other people and interact with them, how should we behave? Who are we encountering? To whom are we speaking? Who is this person? Who is in front of you? What is in front of you? Color and shape. From this color and shape, what is arising? Words. Oh, someone is speaking to me. Who is speaking to me? Now, you can put on the name. When you put on the name, that name will act as a landing pad onto which very rapidly a whole invasion army of linked signifiers will arrive. So you will know exactly who you're talking to. Then you have to be very careful now. So you are talking to someone you know. So you are talking to the person you know. So who are you talking to but an extension of yourself? No wonder it gets a bit dreary. Maybe you could not know who you're speaking to. By not knowing who you're speaking to, maybe you could help them not to know who's speaking. Then the conversation might be more interesting. Because otherwise you're likely just to go around the houses. You know somebody plays golf, so you ask them how's their game of golf. You know somebody likes tennis, now the sun's out, so you say, oh, have you started playing tennis yet? You know, very nice, very friendly, very connected, but also very validating of the existing structures and not offering much room to maneuver, room to breathe. Here we have the infinite potential of each person. Maybe we could be surprised. Maybe we could really mean it when we say, how are you? How are you? Tell me about how you are. What's your breath like? Huh? My breath? Huh? I don't know. Oh, I'm interested in your breath. Do you know? And then you're into a completely different kind of conversation. Would that be rude? Would that be to intrude, to step too far, to assume that we have a right to know that other people breathe in and out? Would it be more polite to wrap ourselves and themselves in what we know about them, so that we step very gently around all the thin ice areas? Is that kindness or collusion? That's at the heart of what we are about. Do we believe, really, all beings are pure, all beings can awaken to the freshness and undefendedness of that position, and therefore be open, be more spontaneous, just see? What mistake is likely to be so terrible that you can't apologize and make some reparation? It's very important. Otherwise, everything will become so finely choreographed, so finely attuned, that in your very empathic connection with the person, you will lose them. You will find them as they are, but you will lose them as all that they are, which is not confined by what they are. And the same for yourself. And every time you do that for the other, you make the same limiting gesture towards yourself. So, wisdom and compassion mean wisdom is the openness which is not resting on anything, and compassion is to allow ourselves to move in the world. And if we bump into people and upset them, we can attend to that and apologize if necessary, or understand their distress, and move again, and move again, and move again. There is no way to get it right. There is no way to behave properly. There is no rule book which applies across the world to all beings. In some cultures, it's quite acceptable to wipe your nose on your hand. Quite acceptable. You can be sitting with very posh people. And that's quite acceptable. In our country, better not do that. Different cultures cut the world in different ways. So how will you know how to behave? Who has the true rule book? This is always the problem. If there is no rule book, how shall we guide ourselves? By participation. But participation means to be naked. To be naked means not to know in advance. It means to trust creativity, spontaneity, the richness of the unborn Dharmakaya. And this is what we can all practice with. This is the practice. In the meditation, to be as open as possible, releasing and releasing and releasing all the thoughts and feelings that arise, till there is a easy, uninterrupted flow. And then as we come into the world, the linking together of our flow with the flow of other beings, so that you get a gentle interfacing, you get a real immediacy of connection, and then opening, connecting and opening, rather than building up blocks of expectation and codes of conduct. Are there any thoughts or questions before we come to an end today? No?
We're talking about lineage, and lineage is often passed on from one incarnation to another.
Mm-hmm.
So what's reincarnates?
What reincarnates?
Yeah.
The name. Now we have the 17th Karmapa. He's got the name. The name has reincarnated. Whether the person has reincarnated or not, we don't know. We can't go to the 16th Karmapa and ask, hey, 16th, is this really the 17th? Is he really you? So we ask the 17th, are you really the 16th? But should we believe him? So the thing that has incarnated is the name. The king is dead, long live the king. So what is incarnated? Incarnation. Karne. Meat is incarnated. Mummy and Papi get it together, and then a baby's born. So that's meat is moving on, biological basis or support for existence is moving on. What is it that comes into that is the open potential of the mind and the detritus of previous existences and the colorations of previous existences, the tendencies, the impulses, and so on. So there is the open potential and there is the furniture. So in coming into a new incarnation, it's like moving into an empty flat and you bring in your furniture. And sometimes the furniture you have fits your flat very well, and sometimes it doesn't. Some kids are born into families and they don't fit, they don't belong. Some kids have a great childhood and they feel completely at home, completely at ease. That's already part of it. Some people have furniture which works incredibly well for the first 18, 20 years of their life, and then when they're 21, it all gets woodworm and rots and they just have a pile of dust on the floor and they don't know who they are, they have a breakdown. Some people have furniture which was packed in a box until they were 40. And then one day they opened up the box and they thought, wow, what's all this stuff? Hey, I'm not so bad after all. So we all have these different aspects of ourselves which are awakening and falling asleep. What it is, the thing which is incarnated is the same as who is the one who is doing the meditation. So if you find who is the one who says I, then you'll know who is incarnated. Keep looking.
I'll let you know.
We'll all be interested.
Okay, so this 3R practice you can do very easily. Also, another quicker way is just to relax into the out-breath. So it's a very beautiful evening. Perhaps you go and sit in the park or you sit with friends. If you find yourself in a conversation and it's getting a bit tight or tangled, without saying anything or moving away, just relax into the out-breath, come back to your freshness and re-engage. Seeing shapes, hearing sounds coming and going, just the movement of existence, staying fresh and open to that. And whenever you get locked and you feel a bit burdened, God, I've had enough, it's too much, relax and open. Take another bite. Take another bite. And gradually you find that it's not like having a big bag on your shoulder. It's not like in India you can see the children who go out in the villages and they carry a wicker basket on their back and they scoop up the cow dung and slap it in. We can go through life like that. Every time we find something good, we're suddenly burdened. The good thing we need burdens us down. When we talk about not being conditioned, do mache. Dua means to gather together. Mache means not doing, not making a composite or a compound. It means when you're in a social interaction, don't build up the narrative story and wrap yourself inside it. Just allow each thing to be precisely as it is and resolve and resolve. So most of us are very good at gathering things in. We're hoarders, but we also need to let go. If you were always to breathe in and never breathe out, you would be dead. So in the same way, if you keep filling your mind and you don't release things, releasing is easiest when you trust that more will come. There will always be new things in life. Always be new things. Another autumn, another spring, and then one day we're dead. But until then, there is always something. So hanging on to stuff, thinking that we're living in the last chance saloon, and if we don't grab it today, we'll never get it again. This kind of desperation leads to a terrible attachment, a holding, which then makes everything highly compacted until you can't move. It's like being very constipated. Everything is packed. You can't release your bowels. And so the body gets into a state of paralysis. The mind gets into the same state as well. So in our everyday life, we can practice just releasing. Just releasing. If somebody says something that you don't like, you can just feel the irritation and it's gone. You don't need to think, oh, I really don't like this person. Why do they always have the blah, blah? You can experience that layering up and release. Layer it up, release. You don't have to block the negative feelings in yourself, but you can just think, ooh, and it's gone. Who is it now who is in front of me? Is it the same person? How can you be sure? If you tell yourself that you know who the person is, then you're taking the whole history of your relationship as the basis for communicating with them. That is to say, you're operating on the basis of a construct and a compound. So how can you have a fresh beginning? It's not that they haven't said these things. They have said these things, and that brings its own marking. But that's not a reliable indicator of what they're going to do now. The best defense against people who are sharp is to be light on your feet. Wearing armor doesn't really help. Trying to avoid them, what's that going to do? It'll make your world very small. Just learn to dance a bit better. Why should people not be sharp? Why should people not be cruel? They are. So how to survive the cruelty, the indifference, the nastiness of other people? The people that can get into boring monologues and tie up our minds. How to live with that? Release. Release. Hello. Release. Hello. Release. Hello. If you've always got the welcome, you stay open. Isn't that the best way to live? And if you've got the release, you won't get invaded and overwhelmed. So instead of having a bouncer on the door to make sure that no bad people get in, you have a trap door halfway in and you get them out. Everyone's welcome. It's like Sweeney Todd. Okie dokie. So we just sit for a moment, and if there has been any merit from today, we share this out with all beings. Just imagining our connection with all sentient beings in all the many states they find themselves in, and we integrate ourselves with them. Gewandi nyödö da öjen lama drjene droa chi chama lupa dei sala ke basho. Okay, so we meet again tomorrow, 10 o'clock.